Another blockbuster trade in the NFL. This week has been wild. It will not stop with NFL free agency. Kenny Pickett has been traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, Kenny Pickett, their starting quarterback, who was drafted in the first round in the 2022 NFL draft, has been traded already inside the state of Pennsylvania. That's right. He will fly, Pickett, fly, because Kenny Pickett will become a Philadelphia Eagle and the new backup quarterback for Jalen Hurts. The deal, according to Adam Schefter, is the 98th overall selection in this year's draft, along with two 2025 7th-round picks from the Eagles for Kenny Pickett and the 120th selection in this year's draft. This is crazy. So apparently, Kenny Pickett was okay with competing for the quarterback job in Pittsburgh until he wasn't. That's at least what's being reported right now, and with time, we'll probably find out the real story here. But Kenny Pickett to the Eagles just basically tells us that the Pittsburgh Steelers are all the way unlimited. That's what it tells us. It tells us that Russell Wilson is going to be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. It tells us, let's ride, baby. And it feels like that has been the case all offseason, all free agency, with guys like Patrick Queen, with Russell Wilson, and just the vibes of the building in Pittsburgh being all in on Russ. And if Russ plays well, this team could be scary for the Steelers, which is exactly what Patrick Queen said. I'm just quoting him here. So Kenny Pickett is now going to be a backup. Kenny Pickett is now going to have a chance to learn in Philadelphia from an offensive coach. And hopefully Kellen Moore can tutor him up, and hopefully he can become a pretty interesting prospect down the line for the Eagles, because this guy is still extremely young. You know, looking at his career, he's only played 2 years in the NFL. He's 25 years old, which I guess is a little bit older for a guy that's entering his third year in the NFL, but 6'3", 220. He was a first-round pick. He was the top quarterback drafted in 2022 in an absolute abysmal class that only really ended up giving us Brock Purdy, I think. And that's about it. And he was literally the last pick in the NFL draft. So that draft was just a complete whiff for quarterbacks. But so far in his career, to get a perspective on what Kenny Pickett has been, he is 7-5 in both seasons as a starter. And he has never thrown, get this, he has never thrown 8 touchdown passes in an NFL season. And he is 7-5 in both seasons. He is 14-10 as a starter in his career. 63% as a rookie, 62% as a second-year player. He had 2,400 yards and 2,070 yards. So, I mean, there's a lot of regression in his stats. Outside of passer rating, where he went up 5 points in his passer rating, he went up a little bit on yards per completion. He went up a tad on yards per attempt. But his interceptions did drop in year 2 from 9 to 4, which definitely helped them win some games. He did, provide some clutch fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives. In his first season, 4 game-winning drives. In his second season, 3 game-winning drives. He was 6th in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting in his first season, mostly due to team success, in my opinion. But Kenny Pickett is a guy that I kind of liked coming out of the draft. Like, I was like, yeah, if you're going to pick a guy in the first round, he feels like the safest guy to pick. But a lot of times we're trying to make that case for a lot of prospects, because quarterback is such an important position that you have to take a chance on one of these guys. And I was extremely high on Matt Corral, which I don't, say proudly, because Corral has not worked out as an NFL quarterback for other reasons. But, Pickett was kind of the safest prospect in that class. And the Steelers took him, and they took a chance, and it is what it is. I mean, they didn't really, lose anything by picking him. It was just a missed draft pick, and they got a starting quarterback out of it for 2 seasons. But I mean, he never really worked out. And I think when you watch him play, part of it is the fact that he's a gamer. Like, he's got a good attitude towards playing the position. He feels like a guy that has a presence, has charisma at the position as a leader and as a player. But it also feels like Kenny Pickett is somebody that also has tools, but not necessarily the tools that you need to be an elite player, right? You watch him play and yeah, he's fairly accurate. Yeah, he's got a decent arm, but not a great arm. Yeah, he can scramble, but he's not Lamar Jackson. Yeah, he's got good size, but I mean, he doesn't look like Cam Newton. So like, there's a lot of things about him where it's like in the middle. So it feels like he looks like a starting quarterback, but to me, there were some funky things with his release. Every time I'd watch him, his inaccuracies, especially on like easy throws, is glaring. Like just, I've never seen a quarterback miss so many easy underneath crossing routes in my life. I've never seen so many players just throw the ball like 4 yards in front of a player or like throw the ball at the dirt so many times. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to need to transition to Russell Wilson. And I've already discussed how I love that addition. It's $1.2 million. It's, a lot of upside and very little risk with Russell Wilson. And it feels like he has already taken that team and it's his team. And that's what happens when you sign a Russell Wilson. Like I've experienced that with my team, with Cam Newton. It's like when he is signed to that team, he is the team. It takes on his personality. He is the leader. Everyone gravitates towards that guy. When you're a Hall of Fame player, when you're a MVP candidate, when you're one of those players that at least had a reputation at one point in time as being elite, as being a winner, as being a champion, that type of bravado, that type of like impact, you're going to have a lot of players follow you. And with Kenny Pickett, I'm sure he was uncomfortable with that. But also at the same time, if these reports are true about competition, I kind of look at that and I say, bro, like you're not willing to compete for your job? Like, what's this about? Now, maybe he feels like he's been treated unfairly. I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe he felt like the offense was never kind of crafted or built for him. And maybe he'll have a better opportunity to succeed elsewhere, a lot like Mac Jones from being traded from New England to Jacksonville. And those two guys kind of have corresponding, traits in terms of what I thought they brought to the NFL in terms of anticipation, in terms of accuracy. I thought Mac was a much better prospect, but I think that Kenny brought, some of the things that I liked on the tape was his touch on the football, was his creativity, was his, ability to extend plays, but that not being the main function of his game. And I think he's just been a little bit too reckless, a little bit too inconsistent, and just not talented enough. Like that's flat out what I feel. Like he's kind of a finished product at this, when we saw him come out of college, and it felt like he never really got any better. And it was just the same guy that switched Pittsburgh schools, switched Pittsburgh teams, right? That's kind of what it felt like with Kenny Pickett, and he just never was able to improve. But part of it with Mac and part of it with Kenny, I feel like, different reasons, but also kind of similar, is that Mac kind of had a defensive coach, a legendary coach, a guy that the fan base was always going to back. And then, Kenny was stuck with some bad offensive coordinator situations. So was Mac, right? So the offensive lines were both kind of bad for a moment there. The run games were inconsistent. The defenses ruled the team. And that's kind of been the case for both these guys. And now they're both getting fresh starts. They're very similar. And they were even drafted in similar ranges of the draft. Pickett was drafted 20th. I think Mac was drafted like 15th or something like that. So like they're very similar players in terms of people thought they were ready for the NFL, but they just couldn't have those traits that could go above and beyond, but they do make good backups because of that. So for Philadelphia, we look at a team that just covets the backup quarterback. We look at a team that loves having a manageable, like sustainable backup quarterback. So you look at Nick Foles, who won the Super Bowl for them. Nick Foles, who went to the playoffs and actually participated in a playoff game for them in 2018 against the Saints. In 2019, Josh McCown was their backup quarterback. He ended up playing, I believe, for Carson Wentz. In 2020, Jalen Hurts was the backup. They drafted him in the second round, right? And then he eventually became the starting quarterback. Gardner Minshew in 2021, one of the premier backup quarterbacks in the NFL for the past few years. Gardner Minshew in 2022 was the backup quarterback once again. Then they signed Marcus Mariota, who's a well-respected backup quarterback. Washington just paid him a nice, hefty contract to be a backup there. And then now Kenny Pickett. So they obviously value having that backup quarterback that has a little bit of experience starting, maybe a little bit of potential. Kenny Pickett is a little bit of a rare case in terms of being a younger guy. I guess Minshew is somewhat similar, where they're both similar in terms of they're not overly physically talented, but they have traits that make a good starting quarterback, and they're just missing something to be a franchise quarterback. I think that is kind of similar. I think Minshew, though, showed more flashes in Jacksonville than Pickett has shown with the Steelers. Like, honestly, Pickett has not been much better than, like, a bottom 5 quarterback in the league. I can't really say anything different than that. Pickett, he goes to the Eagles. Hopefully he can improve his standing in the NFL. Hopefully he can learn, and maybe he'll even get a chance. Jalen Hurts is a player that's going to run. Jalen Hurts is going to take contact. Jalen Hurts is going to get some nicks and some bruises. And last year it felt like, for whatever reason, Hurts was playing injured and he would never come out of the game, and the Eagles never really decided to turn to Marcus Mariota. And maybe if that were to happen again, because it clearly impacted Jalen Hurts down the stretch. He was not the same player as he was in 2022 or that he was at the beginning of the year, right? In terms of running, in terms of just overall play. And some of that was team-oriented, scheme-oriented, but some of that is also like possibly injury-oriented. So something to think about when it comes to Jalen Hurts. I would not consider this a competition thing. I don't think Kenny Pickett is anywhere near competing for a job at the level of Jalen Hurts, especially after the contract that the Eagles gave him not long ago. So, this is a compelling move. I think the Steelers are able to replenish some draft capital from that first-round pick and roll with their new guy in Mr. Russell Wilson. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's Mitch. Thanks so much for watching. Gronk spiked the like button, baby, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.